Hello, good morning, Dr. Shetty.
Morning.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Welcome, sir. This is such a pleasure to have you here with us on Charcha 2020 Day 2. It's been 17 years since I did an interview and introduced you in our college festival. So I'm very, very pleased to reintroduce you for this particular event as well.
Thanks.
So I'm just going to quickly introduce the speaker. For the audiences, we welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this wonderful session from Dr. Devi Prasad Shetty. Dr. Devi Prasad Shetty is a cardiac surgeon of international repute and a successful entrepreneur, highly respected luminary for his ingenious ideas for reforms in healthcare sector. His visionary leadership to make quality healthcare affordable for all has drawn global recognition. Treading the path of economies of scale to bring down the cost of healthcare delivery, he founded the Narayana Hridayalaya, benefiting more than 3.4 million rural poor. Dr. Shetty has also served as member of Board of Governors of Medical Council of India. Several governments, state governments, national government have honored him with multiple awards, the most notable being the Padma Shri and the Padma Bhushan. An alumnus of Kasturba Medical College and having undergone higher training in the NHS UK, Dr. Shetty has held positions in reputed hospitals in Bangalore and Kolkata. He is currently the expert advisor panel of Give India's India COVID Response Fund as well. Dr. Shetty, without taking much of your time, I would now request you to please take us through the session. As discussed, you would be touching upon the key steps that we need to take now as we combat COVID-19 for the next few months. All yours, sir.
Thank you, Shailendra. Thank you so much for the opportunity. First of all, I would like to compliment the government for the great job they have done. First is going for a lockdown. When people asked why so early, we hardly have any patients. But the government declared lockdown, which was extended again, which I believe would be responsible for reducing the mortality following COVID significantly, maybe to the tune of nearly 50%. So that is a best thing what happened to our country, which was totally unprepared for a pandemic of this magnitude. The second reason why I want to compliment the government is that the entire frontline workers today facing COVID epidemic are the government hospitals, government doctors, government nurses, and government paramedics. For probably the right reason, government decided that the COVID center of action should shift to the government hospitals, not the private hospitals. We are not allowed to treat COVID patients, and we are not complaining, but we were prepared anyway. But if the number really exceeds the more than what the government hospitals can manage, we are prepared to manage the rest of the patients. Then the other interesting thing what happened was when the COVID broke out, we only had about 30,000 to 40,000 ventilators in the country. Today, I guess the country is prepared to have more than 1.5 to 2 lakh ventilators, or have enough ventilators to even export to other countries. Again, about the PPE, there are only 3 companies in India which were recognized to make PPEs. Today, I guess there are at least more than a dozen or 2 dozen companies which can make few thousand PPEs every day if required. So essentially, we are in a very interesting country which does amazing things in a record period of time. Now, Going back to the current reality, coming back to the current reality, if COVID spreads beyond the current number, if the COVID spreads to rural parts of the country, which can happen with the millions of migrants going back to their own hometown, what is the strategy? My guess is that it wouldn't be an exponential number which cannot be managed by the establishment we have. We have to now prepare our country for the exponential number of COVID, which can happen. Let's hope for the best that nothing happens of that nature. But if the worst happens, we should be not regretting. Our whole strategy should be now, not about the lockdown and the its impact. It's about saving lives. Let's assume that large number of people will get infected, and if that happens, how we are going to manage. Our frontline attack should be at the district level. We have about 730 or 740 district hospitals in the country. These district hospitals generally have about 150 to 300, 500 beds. But their greatest handicap is that they do not have enough number of medical specialists. The interesting thing about managing COVID in the ICU is that we need to have young specialist doctors who are comfortable in intubating a patient, connecting the COVID patients to the ventilator, adjusting the ventilator, and managing low cardiac output and other problems in the ICU. Unfortunately, we really do not have that many people with the expertise at the district level. So we need to relook at our manpower requirement, especially creating a large pool of young people, because the COVID ICU is not the best place for doctors past the age of 60 to be working. The most important group of people in managing COVID ICU are the anesthesiologists in the country. Unfortunately, we really do not have that many people who are trained as intensivists per se. Most of the intensivists practicing in our country come from anesthesia background. Now, we need to get them in large numbers. But now the next question is, what is the current number of anesthesiologists we have in the country? We do not have more than 40,000 anesthesiologists in the country. And at least half of them will be past the age of 50 and 60, who may not be very comfortable in entering the COVID ICU. So we need to mobilize huge workforce from the young lot of doctors who are currently undergoing training in anesthesiology. So we may have to change our medical council guidelines in terms of allowing the final year postgraduate students who are doing MD in anesthesia or DNB in anesthesia, who haven't yet appeared for the exam, as doctors who have finished the training, and they should be awarded the degree provided they work in the government hospital or any other COVID hospital for 6 months to 1 year till the crisis is over. That will give us about 40,000 young doctors who are trained in managing ICU care. Then we have close to about 3,000 to 4,000 young doctors who have finished their fellowship through various associations like Critical Care Association or Emergency Medicine Association. They are very familiar in managing low cardiac output and managing ventilator, intubating these patients. They will be the right people, provided their degrees recognized by the medical council. So essentially, we need to really look at mobilizing large number of these young people who are familiar in the ICU environment. Identifying a GP practicing in the city or in a town and posting them in a ICU where COVID patients are treated is of no use, because they will not be able to understand, they may not be able to interpret the ECG coming up in the cardiac monitor. They may not be able to monitor a patient in low cardiac output or even touch a ventilator. So we need to identify skilled workforce who are young and who are willing to touch the COVID patients. And this group of people alone will make a difference between life and death in this situation. So there is a worry, if the number really skyrockets, do we have enough number of beds to manage these patients? We have seen in China and other countries, they convert the stadiums as the COVID hospital. We may not need to go to that level, because we are blessed in having 500 medical college hospitals. These hospitals have 500 beds to 1,000 beds, 1,500 beds. And these buildings are built in a manner that it is ideally suited for managing COVID patients, because every bed has an oxygen connection. Fortunately, 80% to 90% of the COVID patients do not really require ICU care. Only 5% of the people may need ICU care. Maybe another 5% will need oxygen, which can be provided in the the medical college hospitals. So we may not have a great shortage of hard infrastructure like ICU bed or ventilator or PPE. In this period of 2-3 months, we have prepared ourselves for all these hard infrastructure requirement. Our only problem, which is not addressed currently, is the problem of skilled manpower. So we need to really look at out-of-the-box solutions to get the young people to work at the critical care units where COVID patients are managed. The other suggestion I have is that these patients require round-the-clock care. We really cannot have that many people working in the ICU round the clock. And doctors working in COVID ICU can work only for 6 hours, mainly because their PPE makes it unbearable to stand and work for more than 6 hours. And they also need a break after every week. So in order to supplement the additional medical supervision, we can use gadgets like WhatsApp, which is ubiquitous, everyone has. And the doctors, the young doctors working at night, they can just take the photograph of the cardiac monitor and the input-output chart of the patients or the blood gas report. And senior doctors working from home can easily monitor these patients in their mobile phone or a tablet. And these tools are already available, and fortunately in India, bandwidth is not a problem. So even though you have less manpower in the ICU, we have a huge number of senior intensivists with pulmonologists and physicians who can manage these patients remotely. They may not be even belonging to the state, they can be somewhere else. So by using technology and a huge youth skilled manpower, what we have, I am convinced that these out-of-the-box solutions can bring down the mortality following COVID-19 significantly. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm most grateful.
Thank you, Dr. Shetty. That was very crisp, very well articulated. Thank you very much. There are a few questions which have come up. So one of the questions is, what do you think would be the role of tele-ICUs, especially in the peripheral areas, not in big cities like Mumbai and Delhi, but how do you see the tele-ICUs grow?
See, leave the small towns, even in city like Bombay and Delhi, tele-ICU is a phenomenal model. The reason is, you really cannot staff these ICUs with adequate number of workforce around the clock. You have one group of people who are doers. These are the people, somebody gives them the instruction that you have to change the ventilator setting or you have to increase the inotrope. But if the people working at the front line near the bedside, if they have to take the decision and if they have to act on it, then you need a huge workforce. So we strongly recommend not exposing huge workforce for the COVID problem, COVID patients. Instead, these patients should be monitored remotely. And ideally, you should have a dedicated software, which is not very popular, it's not available everywhere. So we can use devices like WhatsApp to do the same thing.
Right, right. Any additional thoughts on improving the human resource challenge in a very short period of time, apart from the
Shailendra, can I answer the question?
So please go ahead. I think we lost Dr. Hegde for some time.
Yeah, no problem. See, essentially, India is perhaps the only country in the world which can produce at least 1 lakh young skilled doctors from thin air who can manage COVID patients. No other country can do it. Mainly because we train huge number of young doctors, but their opportunity to get the certification as a anesthesiologist or intensivist is very, very small.
Right.
Nevertheless, they have undergone the training, but their degree is not, the experience is not recognized. Right. If the medical council thinks that this is an exceptional situation, and in exceptional situation, we have to take exceptional calls, this is something what is available.
Right.
There are very few, hardly any country I can think of which has the benefit of having so many skilled specialists.
Thank you, sir. I think Dr. Hegde is facing some issues, okay. But thank you so much for your session.